Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Stephanie. This is the Let Me Introduce You series. As I say, this is the Let Me Introduce You series where I introduce you to authors that I absolutely love, favorites of mine, people that I have come to love, books that I've recently read, and authors that I want to introduce you guys to that I think you guys should go check out. So at this time, let me introduce you to Miss Tiffany Patterson. Hello, Tiffany. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm doing well. Happy Memorial Day.
Yes. Now, go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
So, I am Tiffany Patterson, author of over 40, primarily interracial, but also there is some African American romance in there. So, over 40 romance books.
Awesome. That sounds amazing.
Okay.
So, when did you realize that you wanted to be an author?
That's so funny. I don't think I ever had a realization that this is what I wanted to do. It almost stumbled into my lap. Like I've always been a reader my whole life. And then in college, I was studying political science and I thought I wanted to do the law thing. And I had an idea to write a book. And it just like kind of it came to me and kind of like I never did anything with it. And then years and years go by and I get more and more into romance books specifically, and that's when the idea kicks up again to write another book and how I would design the characters and all that. And then so in 2000 late 2014 is really when I got the urge. I was kind of in between careers, I had some free time, and so I was like, there was Amazon's Kindle had come along and it was making it easier for a lot of self published and indie authors to do their thing. And I was like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna give it a try. And the first book I wrote was garbage, didn't go anywhere. But I learned a lot. I learned that I need to be a plotter and not a pantser. And so I took some ideas from that book and I decided to start plotting and developing those characters in different ways. And that eventually became my very first book, which is Black Pearl.
Oh, I did not know that. I did not know no Black Pearl was your first book. I will have to make note of that because I did not know that. So you're just answering questions for me before I can even ask them, by the way.
Sorry, I can be long-winded.
Oh no, long-winded is good. But
Okay.
you're just answering questions out of order. No.
I do that with my scene too. I'm like, this was supposed to be a 1,500 word scene, and it's 2,500 words now, and there's so much detail. I have to like check with my editor and be like, is this too much? And she's like, no, it's okay. I was like, okay, yeah.
So you mentioned that you started with Amazon and having independently or self-published. So are you completely self-published, independent, or are you a traditional author or a hybrid of all?
Yeah, so I'm completely self-published, and I want to go back. So my first three books, Black Pearl, first more than three, Black Pearl, but my first series, I didn't independently publish. I was with a small indie publisher, Jessica Watkins Presents, and
Okay.
she did a lot of interracial and urban romance. And so I found her through other authors that I was reading. And so I sent her like the first three chapters of Black Pearl that I had at the time, and she loved it. And I got a contract almost immediately. So my first works were published under her, and I've since within this year actually regained the rights to that. So that's why I republished it. So that's why like there's some confusion. Some people think like, oh, did Black Pearl just come out in 2022? But I'm like, no, that's a 6-year-old book. But I love
Ah,
it. But yeah.
you recovered those as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They have all new covers because the old covers had her publishing name on it. So
Okay.
it's now published under my company.
That's what I noticed on Amazon when I was going through them. Like, that's why I was like, what? Black Pearl is
Yeah.
your first one? Because,
Yeah.
because they definitely have new covers and they're different. And I was like, okay, is this so? I should have missed this one. I should have read this one too. Um, so are you a fan, since you live in the sort of the Kindle world? Are you a fan of KU, or what's your feeling on that?
I am. And can I tell you, though, I've been published in KU for over 6 years now. I just got a KU subscription within the last 2 or 3 months, which is ridiculous. But I would just buy books. Like you know,
Mm.
I all the authors that I love, I was like, I'm just buying their book. And so, but now because of TikTok, there's so many more recommendations that I'm getting. I'm like, I need a subscription because I want to like read the samples and really figure out if I'm going to actually finish the book before I purchase. There are some authors, so I'm just like automatic one click. I know I'm going to enjoy it because I'm a stan of theirs. But I am a fan of KU. Um, but obviously there are some issue, like not issues, but how do I say it? Like, everyone's not a fan of it because, there are pros and cons to everything.
I was just about to say
And
there's pros and
so the
cons.
exclusivity, right? The exclusivity of it can sometimes hinder. Like it depends if you want to get what audience you want to reach. If there's a
Mhm.
limited span of who you can reach, if you want to target like international audiences, which a lot of authors are wanting to do now.
Okay.
And so KU precludes that because you can't go on, you can't post your work on other websites.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So, what would you say, since you stated you're a reader? What's your top three favorite genres and subtropes right now?
Romance, romance, romance. So I will say, I just finished The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and that book had me a wreck for like 3 days after I finished it. And
Oh
I
wow.
wouldn't call that a romance. I would call it women's fiction. So I guess like
Hmm.
romance, women's fiction, um, and then romance. Like I just love maybe YA because I'm kind of getting into some new
Mm.
YA books that I'm seeing. Um, and my sub tropes. So for romance, like I love a good enemies to lovers, but I also love a friends to lovers. I think friends to lovers is my favorite because I love when the characters already have like that foundation and
Hmm.
there's so much history there that the author can build on. And as the reader, when it's done right, you can really feel the chemistry that's not just the physical, but there's like this foundation of mutual friendship, love, caring, that you can easily see that budding into love. So I love friends to lovers. I eat it up. But I love angst, so that's why I love Second Chance,
Okay.
particularly if it's like enemies to lovers, Second Chance, or um, some type of like. I really enjoy like suspense and angst. So if there's like Second Chance, but like we're enemies for some reason, or there's someone after us, like I love the suspense in it too.
Okay. We could. I mean, the few books that I have read of yours, which by the way, I'm working through your backlist because, ma'am, you have a lot of books. Um,
I forget how many I have.
but you can definitely feel that love for the different tropes and the combinations of tropes within your books. And with you being a plotter, where does your inspiration come from? Is it real life, or is it mostly pop culture, things you see in pop culture, on television, entertainment, things like that? Or do you use real life situations and
Yeah, I
experiences?
I use a mix of both. Like I love real life. I just went on a camping trip a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to a friend as we were driving, and I was telling her a story about from my life of I lost a necklace, and it was really sentimental, and I like had a lot of like shame and guilt for years because it was my father's. My father's passed away. Father passed away when I was really young.
Mm,
Um, And so as I was telling her this, I was like, "Oh, this would make for a good scene." Like, obviously, I've worked through the guilt and stuff around that, and so I'm not. I'm at the space now where I can put it in a book and not like
right.
fall. But so I draw on real life, but I also Music is huge for me when I'm often like in my car driving. I will just get like scene ideas. One book that comes to mind with that is my book Safe Space. It's actually a duet. So there's two books in that series that follows the same couple, which is something it's the only time I've done that. But music plays heavily in that story. And I remember for months as like I was developing the plot for that story, while I was driving, I was listening to Tamia's album. I can't remember the name of it, but her album played a big deal in developing the scenes for that story and even some of the plot of the characters. So music, real life conversations I overhear that like people I don't know but will spark something, dreams. I just this past week, I'm writing a holiday novella now, and a dream inspired a scene from the novella.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have read a couple books. Well, one book in particular, Luke, Luke, that you wrote with a group of other authors, not necessarily that book particularly, but the other books within the series. Do you
Right.
like writing that way, or do you find it easier to write that way, or do you like doing it independently by yourself?
I No. I don't not that I didn't like working on that project. I actually do like working with other authors and being able to bounce ideas off of one another. I love that, but it's something I rarely get to do. Um, and so I've just become used to um, solo writing, I guess. But that project actually helped open me up to being open to like getting more critique partners. Or now my current release that I have coming up in June, I worked with a developmental editor, and this was the first time I actually worked with her while with an editor while I was writing, instead of just writing it, going over it, and then sending the draft to the editor. So I would send her a few chapters at a time, and it really helped to, I think, develop and deepen the story. So in that way, I loved Luke. Um, but Luke, I love that story, but it was a little disjointed the way it came about because there were so many authors who were doing different projects, and so we weren't
Mhm.
always able to meet up and discuss um, the world that we were building at the same time. So that made it a little disjointed. But I do have an appreciation for being able to work with other authors. But
Well,
it's
I
something.
will say there was no disjointedness for me. I mean, it gave me just enough of each of the other characters that we've already met and stuff like that, and
Yeah,
I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it when I read
yeah.
it. So you
I
guys
will
did a
say
good
like
job.
Blue Sapphire. So she was the one of the other authors.
Hmm.
It was basically the world that she created.
Right.
She's a really great. Um, she's also obviously an author in the same subgenre, and she's a really great editor, and she really knows how to like nail down the story and look for like what's missing, figure out like where things are like, because there are still two more books in that series to come out, and so far there are three or four, and
Hmm.
she had to go through each of those books, make sure the details matched up, and she would like pinpoint like, no, in chapter 2 you said he was here, but in her book in chapter 6 they were there, and so it doesn't. And I'm like, how do you do that? Because I don't know. Like, I think
Right.
it's all right. So she's really great in working with in that
That's great. That's great. So you
way.
stated you have a release coming up. What release would that be?
So it's entitled Chosen, and it's my first paranormal romance, official paranormal. I've dabbled in paranormal a little bit before.
Mm.
Um, but this is a shapeshifter. He's a wolf shifter. And yeah, it's my first in the series. He was hit. So the character's name is Shale, and he was introduced in my Townsends of Texas series. So
I
that
was gonna wondering about that because you have one of your covers. I think isn't it My Forever where it's the back and it's the wolf? on the back?
No. So Chosen is
No.
the one with the wolf. So that cover I just released last week. And
Okay.
that's the first one. But he's like the distant cousin of My Forever, of the character from My Forever.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so yeah, so Ace is My Forever. He's not a shifter, but they're distant cousins with a shifter,
Hmm.
which is how
See,
I introduced
you're just giving me lots of work to do, ma'am.
them.
Because I'm one of those people that have to like, I can read out of order, but I don't particularly like to, because I like to have those aha moments when I get to, when I get further in the series and I'm like, oh, that's where that one connects and that's
Yeah.
where that one connects. So,
And I'm trying, as an author, I'm trying to get better at like being able to drop those crumbs for readers, because I was
mhm.
just like, my first 5 years, I was just like so unorganized. And I would like start a series and then not get back to it till a year later. And then so now I'm trying to be like, at the end of each book, like this is the next book in this series and this is the next book. Or, if I drop like some characters who aren't necessarily part of the series, but somehow are
Mhm.
from a past book or something, I will like drop that link at the end of the book, for readers who may just be coming, to my work for the first time.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I have a question. Is writing your full-time job, or do you have a secondary job?
It is my full-time job. I've been doing it full-time since 2017, so going on 5 years now.
Nice. I love it. So, if you could have one of your books or book series made into the big visual format, would it be a movie, a television show, or a limited series? And I'm going to make you choose one of your babies. Which one would it be?
Oh, that's so hard. Um, ooh, so I would say movie because I'm a fan of movies. Um, and this is probably not fair answer because this book hasn't released yet, but I'm gonna say Chosen, just because I feel like I've taken the action scenes in this book up another level for me, and so I feel like I would love to see how that plays out on screen.
Oh, that sounds
So
fun.
yeah. And
That
just
sounds
like the
amazing.
imagery I have in my head, like the book, most of the book is based in New Mexico.
Okay.
And they're surrounded by mountains. So like the imagery of just the mountains and the water and the beautiful like full moon, because it's a shifter story, like that plays out in my head. And I would love to see that on the big screen.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds so much fun. So, let me see. I would love to know your fan cast for one of your books from the Rescue 4 series.
Ooh, okay. I'm terrible at these because I don't know actors' names, but I'm
Well,
gonna
we'll
do
work it out. We'll work it out. So you throw out
okay.
some like they were in this or they were in that, and we're gonna figure out this fan cast.
Okay. Right, I like that. So I'm gonna pick Eric's Inferno because
Okay.
when you said there's some Rescue 4 is my firefighter series, right? And so there's a ton of
Mm-hmm.
firefighter shows on. But I'm thinking of, I believe, so I never watched this show, but was it Chicago Medicine, or
Chicago Fire.
not, not the fire one, but the one that was based in the hospital. There was an Asian actor on there, right?
So Chicago Med.
Chicago Med. And there was an Asian actor. I don't know his name. I apologize, but I remember
I
thinking
have
he
his
was
face in
really
my brain.
really cute. I could see him playing Eric,
Okay.
and I hope that's not disrespectful because Eric is Korean, and I don't know what that
If
actor
that
his
okay.
heritage was. Um, so I could see him playing Eric, and I could also see, and what's her name that was on the same show? She was a former dancer, turned actress. She often has like her hair in braids. Black woman. I could see her being
Hmm.
Angela. Why can't I
I'm
think?
not exactly sure because I that's not my fire show. I'm an ABC fire show girl, so
Okay.
but I know which characters because I've seen because the Asian doctor made one of the screens, not the screens, one of the posters
Okay.
and a lot of the trailers. Now the female though, I'm trying to think.
She was also like, she's been around for a while. Was she out like when a she was a model or something like on America's Next Top Model, and then she was in a movie with Antonio Banderas, where she was dancing. This was like
Hmm.
years ago, like well over a decade ago. And now she,
I'm not sure, but we'll just we're gonna figure this out, and I'm gonna have a representation of her right over somewhere in the middle of us.
I'll try to look her up because she was really pretty. I think she could play good Angela or Angel.
Okay. Okay. So, what would you consider your perfect writing environment?
Okay, so I'm actually picturing this like being in, I want to say like in Europe, like in a foreign country like Italy, Portugal. And I'm saying this because I'm thinking of doing some traveling next year, like digital
Hmm.
nomading, where like I'm on the balcony with my laptop perched on a little table in the morning, just finished breakfast or having breakfast, where like sun is shining. There's these old like colonial typical European style buildings surrounding our apartments, and people are on the street, and I'm just writing and peaceful, and with the
That
window
sounds
door open,
super peaceful.
isn't it? Yeah, sounds perfect.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so speaking of peacefulness, are
Mhm.
you a music in the background or do you need complete silence when you're writing?
I can do either or. There are sometimes I just need music to help me push through it. I've been on a Taylor Swift kick for the last month and a half, 2 months, which is strange, but that's where we are. So I have pull her stuff up, and I will listen to it. Um, so lately, I wouldn't say I've needed music. My holiday Last week I was writing in my holiday novella, and just to like help get in the holiday mood, because obviously we're in May right now.
Right.
I've needed to pull up some Christmas music to help with that.
Okay, okay. And are you a early morning, noonish type writer or an evening writer?
Morning,
Evening, late
definitely
night.
morning person. I like to hit it hard because a lot of times I have a word count for the day, and every time I'm like, if I don't, I won't let myself go to bed until I've hit this word count. And so sometimes
Mm.
that ends up being like I have to extend into the night. But it really, that like helps push me in to get the bulk of my writing done in the morning, so that by afternoon I can either focus on like administrative tasks or, promotional things like that. Um, but yeah, I'm more of a morning person.
I love it. So you have good descriptions within your story. Is there a reason behind that?
It's funny you say that because I always think like that's the area I need improvement of, like my settings. And I say
Really?
that because a couple years back, my when I started working with one of my other editors, the notes she was making was like, describe where they're at more, describe this. So I've kind of always thought of that as one of my weaknesses. Um, so I guess I will say that prompting from her has helped with that. So I'll say,
Hmm.
but I love to incorporate the settings because I really want to give a visual of where it is that these people are, or like what it is that I see in my head. I want to put that on paper. Um, and so I try not to go too overboard with the descriptions, because I know for me, like when I'm reading a story where there's too much description, that takes me out of the story, and I'm like, I love a character driven story, so that's always going to be my primary focus, is the characters and the people that I'm telling the story about.
Mhm.
But I just don't want it's called, I think in the writer world they call it white room syndrome, where like you just have them in this, you're not describing anything, and so
Ah,
it
okay.
the reader comes across as like just this blank white room that's nothing.
Well, I will say that your descriptions are a very good balance. It's not overly descriptive, but it's not so ambiguous that you're like, oh, they could be right down the street, or they could be in a volcano.
So that's
You
good
set
to
it up
hear.
nicely.
Yeah.
So would you consider yourself a person that can visually see the words you're writing or reading, or do you just write and just read?
No, I visually see. Yeah. I've always been that way. I remember like in sixth grade, um, the teacher like posed a question. It was like, do you prefer reading or watching TV? And like all of my like friends were like watching TV, and I was like reading because then I can like see the story in my head. And so I guess like that's always been my thing, like picturing scenes in my head and really just trying to get that on paper.
I love that. I love that. So I got a hard question for you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on trigger warnings?
Ooh, okay. So I'm a fan of trigger warnings. I definitely believe they have a place, and we being authors should start incorporating them. Um, and that speaks for like someone who's gone 40 books without having written trigger warnings, because I was in a place that I didn't recognize that um, it was something that was needed by readers, or wanted and needed. And so since I've become aware of that, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, it makes sense, right? Like on movies and television shows, we have content warnings. Like I watch a lot of true crime on YouTube, and I will see authors say like, well, it's going to be hard. It's going to be this. They should know there's violence. But I watch true crime where like the obvious setup is some horrific crime that's happening. And even those YouTubers are like, trigger warning, this is going to contain, X, Y, and Z. If that's not your
Mhm.
thing right now, close out. I'm like, duh. Like, I think it's really just a great way, like even though like yeah, you may be into true crime or into dark romance or whatever, it is another like barrier to the reader that says, just a heads up, like this is what is going to take place, or and the reader who may have just been excited to get into the story, it gives them time to pause and say, oh, that's right, I don't know if I'm up for this today, and so I'm a fan of trigger warnings. I believe we should have them. um as the author, I'm in a place where I'm learning what type of trigger warnings that I need to implement in my stories, and where they need to go, because there's that whole thing on Amazon, like if you put trigger warning, they could, whatever your book
Flag
and
it, right.
so it's really a balance of figuring out like how do I relay this information to the reader so that they aren't triggered when they read my book, because at the end of the day, I'm an entertainer, right? Like I don't want to be the cause of someone being harmed, mentally,
Right.
emotionally. And now, as I'm like doing more promotional work, I'm going back through my stories, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, I don't want to say ashamed, but I'm sad, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things in here that could trigger someone, and how many people who have I triggered that I didn't even think of, who have
Mhm.
reached out to me. And so yeah, I'm a long-winded way to say yes. I'm a fan of trigger warnings, and moving forward, I will be implementing
That's amazing. So even though you're a Black woman,
them.
do
Mhm.
you employ sensitivity readers for your works?
I haven't, because so I do employ beta readers. I use beta readers,
Okay.
and I know there's a difference between beta and sensitivity readers.
Mhm.
Um, but my readers are also, most of them primarily are Black women, and so I know like any feedback that I get will come with that level of sensitivity, if that makes sense, but they
Okay.
aren't hired specifically to be sensitivity readers. So if I am writing story, like, so I am saying that to say that also with trigger warnings, I have been looking into sensitivity readers. Um, and my current, or the editor that I work with for Chosen, I wouldn't call her a sensitivity reader, but she did point me in the direction of sensitivity readers, because my main character, he's part Native. And so I don't incorporate a lot of Native culture in the book specifically. But it was something that I think thought about. I didn't get a chance to find Native sensitivity readers. I know they're out there. I'm not saying that, they don't exist. Of course they do. But yeah, I will be looking more into sensitivity readers.
That's awesome. It's all about doing the work,
Yeah.
when you figure it out, and, making sure that you're not trying to harm or step on anybody's voice and just uplift. So that's amazing that you're doing the work for that. So do your characters, wait, that's not the right question. I think we've actually already done this question that I have. Oh, nope, we haven't. Do you let the characters take the lead in your writing, or do you have like a set plan for them and you kind of stick them to
it? You would think these people are real, the way they like wake me up in the middle of the night. And so, like I said, I am a plotter, but I also call myself a plotter who pants, because
I love it.
because I will now. Within the last year or so, I've even gotten down to like plotting scene by scene, which is not something I did. But I find that it gives me less anxiety as I'm writing to do scene by scene, because I'll have like I'll be 50,000 words in and won't have the next scene, and I'm like, oh, this book is trash. It's done. I don't have anything. And it's ridiculous. Like I have a whole half of the novel plotted out, but because I don't know the next exact scene, anxiety. So, but my characters often, will change it. Like I said, they wake me up in the middle of the night and I have a new scene idea, or literally I was like washing dishes yesterday and like got an image of like something kind of not gross, but like mean happening, we'll say mean. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what you want to do. All right. Sure. So yeah, they often take the lead.
That's awesome. Big that you're a plotter. So how far ahead are you in your writing?
I'm
trying to get all the juice and the tea and the,
Honestly, like, so when you say far ahead, like I have ideas for books like for next year, but there's nothing written down, right?
Hey, that's like, all right. The ideas are there.
They are definitely there, because I have like my second, like I need to do like my Townsend second generation, right? Which is kind of where I'm going with my holiday novella. It's one of my my most popular couple, like 10 years post the ending of their story, right? So the kids are teenagers, or the oldest kids are teenagers, and the youngest ones are like 7 and 9. But like it's kind of just like an update or like a bridge to the second generation, which I am planning to get to next year. So I have that kind of worked out, but then I just, my next release that's coming out in June is also going to be is book 1 in a series of 3 or 4. I think is it going to be 4, but to start off at 3, but these characters, right?
They be like, talking to you. They be like, I want my own book. I'm just a secondary in this one.
You're supposed to not be alive at the end of this book, and now you're getting a whole nother book.
Oh, so do you have a problem with killing off your characters?
No, I mean the obvious villains, not so much, right?
Okay.
Because I love a revenge, but this one in particular, like, even what's funny is like I love getting notes back from my editors and like seeing their reactions as they're reading the story. And one editor, when she found out like what character was kind of behind some of the mischievousness, she was like, no, not him. So it was like I may have just given it away, but it was fun to
because I'm hoping it's not the series that I'm thinking it is, but
no.
we won't leave any spoilers. I'm not gonna say which one it is. We'll talk about that offline.
So Yeah, so no, I can't. Like when I have even for the villains, like I have a soft spot for them. Like sometimes I know they're gonna end up like being unalive, but
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes because I know, like I feel like I know these characters inside out, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, he did some horrible stuff, but his backstory, like, but I don't even care about his back. If he's like hurting the main characters, they don't care about his
Uh-huh.
backstory. So
Uh,
yeah, it's
that's
hard.
hilarious. I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, let's get to these 3 questions.
Okay.
Random questions that I have chosen thanks to Tiffany giving me a number. So she can't come after me if they're outlandish and crazy. So, first question is, who or where would you hunt if you were, or haunt, excuse me, if you were a ghost?
Ooh. It would have to be in the woods, in the mountains somewhere. I'm thinking like Seattle, like the PNC, Pacific Northwest. Just
Mm.
because I want to visit. I love hiking. That's one of my hobbies. And I want to like be out in the mountains somewhere.
So, are you an outdoors person? This is off topic. This is not
I
one of the
would
questions. Are
consider
you an outdoor?
myself, yeah. I would.
Really?
I know,
Oh,
right? It's weird.
oh.
But you know what I found like well, I've always loved walking. And so for
Okay.
years I've been like a walker just around my neighborhood. But I've like tried to get in hiking here and there. Um, and then I moved to Texas 3.5 years ago and joined a hiking group. And now like every weekend I'm hiking.
There's
Like I said,
hiking in Texas?
there is, I know, there's people who are like, really? But I live in San Antonio, which is right outside of Texas
Mm,
Hill Country. And in Texas Hill Country, there's really good hiking. So it's like a
yes.
limited spot in Texas, but yeah. So I lucked up. So I would
Okay.
consider myself an outdoors person.
I couldn't do outdoors. There's too many bugs.
Yeah.
Too many bugs. Too many variations of heat.
It
Okay.
is really hot.
Would you rather eat a whole bag of marshmallows or a whole jar of peanut butter at once?
Peanut butter. Especially
Oh
the
my goodness.
crunchy kind. Especially
Really?
the crunchy kind. Yeah.
Oh, see, I can't
You
do
don't like
peanut
peanut
butter.
butter?
I am not a peanut butter fan. I have to be craving it in order
Okay.
to like eat the Reese's cups and stuff like that. My husband and my kiddo loves Reese cups, loves them.
With
But
good
I
reason.
have to be in a certain kind of mood to, eat peanut
Really?
butter. Yes.
Oh yeah. And what's funny is I didn't like it as a kid. Like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches couldn't stand.
Mm.
Like didn't like it as a kid, but somewhere in my adulthood, like that switch turned, and I was like, give me all the peanut butter. So
And see, I'm opposite. I loved it. I loved it as a kid. Crunchy, like you like crunchy peanut butter. I
Mhm.
loved crunchy peanut butter. I was like, ooh, but it was the worst when it was trying to get on soft bread and it like
Oh yeah,
folds
and they
up.
would tear the bread. That's insane.
But yeah, yep. And like you, somewhere the light switched and was like, you no longer like peanut butter.
Yeah. We just had enough. He was like, okay, we're done with this.
Yep. But every once in a while, I will say I'll have it. And your last question is, what's your reoccurring nightmare? Ooh, that's kind of personal,
Ooh.
but if you don't mind answering that question.
Yeah. Um, Reoccurring nightmare. That something will happen to my brother. Something
Really?
scary. Yeah. I only have one sibling, an older brother, and we are pretty close, even though we live half a country apart.
Hmm.
Um, but like it's just him and I. My father died when I was really young. My mom, she's still alive, but she's in a nursing home. So it's really like we were like the three unit growing up, and now it's like him and me. So yeah,
Hmm.
something happening to him.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, that is that's scary when family members are involved. So yeah. Whew, let's keep it as a nightmare. But
yeah.
Tiffany, thank you oh so much for spending a little time with me and letting me get to know you a little bit better, as well as everyone else that's going to watch this. And I hope you guys go out and read her books. I will have her website link down in the description box. And thank you again, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
You're welcome. Alrighty, everyone. So that was Tiffany Patterson. I hope that you will go out and check out her books. Like I said, her website will be linked down in the description box. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Also, there is a feedback form down in the description box so you guys can help me improve my channel. My PayPal, my Patreon, and all my other social links are down there as well. So you can follow me everywhere. Thank you for watching, and we will see you guys in another video.